and welcome to another edition of the live stream here on the Bow Wow Bill page. As always, give me just a second here and let me share this on my page. And I encourage all of the viewers, if you're watching this, please share this. Information needs to be spread far and wide. And I have with me a good buddy of mine out of New York. Hold on one second here. His name is Josh Moran, and he is a barefoot dog trainer. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, man. How about yourself?
Doing great. So there's one. I see that Josh just shared it. Thank you, sir. And let's go ahead and share this. I like to share it to Dogs Chatting as well. It's a kind of a group that we belong to as dog professionals that get along.
Sure.
So in a group, Dogs Chatting. There we go. And posted. And Josh, how you doing, brother? Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Dude, thanks for having me on.
So let's get into it, man. So you are known as the Barefoot Dog Trainer.
Sure, yeah.
And how did that name come about?
To be perfectly honest, it was just kind of something that was said fairly offhandedly and just stuck. Whenever I can, I try not to wear shoes and socks.
Okay.
It's my preferred way to deal with things. I like walking around outside with no shoes, no socks if I can. I don't necessarily get into too much of the grounding aspects that some people talk about. To me,
That's what I was gonna ask, dude.
to be perfectly honest, it just really feels nice. The human foot has more nerve endings than almost anywhere else on the human body. It's rivaled only by the hands, the genitals, and the face. You're like supposed to feel stuff with your feet, but we jam them in our weird like concubine type shoes and jack up the little pinky toe and all that. And it's just my preferred method is to not have shoes if I can help it. And so somebody at one point just made a joke because I was training dogs pretty consistently with no shoes on in the summertime. Just, oh, he's the barefoot dog trainer. And it just kind of stuck. And it was right when I joined Instagram.
Okay.
And so I just used that as my Instagram handle. And then it totally just kind of ran from there.
You know, I'm looking at the science of grounding actually while you're talking about this, and it's legit stuff, man. So maybe there is something to this. And hey, James Matura from Dudes, he says. So welcome, buddy. Good to have you. You know, there's something to this, and also there's a big movement too about barefoot runners, and they designed that that shoe. I remember a little while ago that just it goes on your barefoot, but it doesn't really, it still has that barrier between those nerves and that earth. And yeah, it's very interesting. I like it too when I'm out here. I need to do it more often. I need to take my shoes off and walk around my property. There's also a gentleman that I remember watching a survival show, and that's all he does is walk around barefoot. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, his name is Cody Lundeen. And he was on a survival show called Dual Survival. There's two guys that used to go out, and one was ex-military, very military-esque, and the other one was a pretty hardcore hippie from Phoenix who lives in a super nice but completely sustainable house, doesn't wear shoes hardly ever. It's his thing too. I personally, it honest to God, just really feels nice to me. So that's why I get down with it. And I'll walk dogs around the city, out in parks, woods, stuff like that without shoes.
Really?
I've got some pretty gnarly calluses for sure. I got some iguana feet for sure.
Okay.
But I like it, man. It feels nice to me. And those Vibram 5-finger shoes you were talking about, I think, they're like gloves for your feet.
Okay.
Yeah, those
you
are.
like those?
Yeah, I've had a couple pairs. not everybody is stoked when you walk into their establishment with no shoes on, so they're they're easy to throw on and appease people. But when you were talking about barefoot running, there's a book called Born to Run that I think is tremendous, and it goes in depth into how modern shoes have actually created a huge amount of back problems and knee problems for people, because it encourages a heel strike when you're walking. You know, people walk and whack their heel on the ground instead of pressing the ball and toes of their feet into the ground and then resting their heel. I'm not an expert on it by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a really, really interesting book, and they have a lot of information in it about people who do not only persistence hunting, where they just chase an animal for 20 plus miles until it kind of dies of exhaustion, but they go on 100+ mile races against people, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I got to get this, man. I'm buying it right now. Born to Run, the hidden tribe, super athletes, and the greatest race in the world, the greatest race the world has never seen, by Christopher McDougall.
Yeah.
And got to buy that really quick while I got you here. And you know, this is kind of why I like this, interaction with colleagues like you, is that we as dog trainers, we belong to an industry where things sometimes are figured out. And I like it when something comes along that just kind of makes people think twice about what they know. And when you see that they're super athletes, and the shoe is something that has taken away it from our abilities instead of added to it, imagine what else is there that we have taken for granted or are looking at a little differently, And so we got some comments here. Monica says, "Hey Josh," Monica Laurie. Brian Flores says, "Greetings, my brothers. Check out the movie The Grounded." So that's another recommendation. So we have Born to Run from Josh, and then the movie The Grounded from Byron here.
What's up, Monica? My brother Byron. Hope you're doing fantastic, my friend.
Grounded movie. And then Tosh is and James are both from the back, or the Down Under region, and
awesome.
And then we have John Sparks. Hey Johnny, how you doing, brother? Good to have you join us as well. And the thing is that I met Josh at an IACP event, an International Association for Canine Professionals, canineprofessionals.com. Definitely check them out, especially if you are in the industry. Let me put it up here on the screen here. And I remember speaking to you about Rupert Sheldrake and unforeseen influences of behavior that could explain how animals interact, how peoples interact with animals, and just kind of a different approach to dog training. And you know what kind of guy Josh is, everybody? A few weeks later, I get in my mailbox a book that Josh got for me, and then also a handwritten letter too, just saying, pleasure to meet you, and I hope we can hang out again shortly. I look forward to discussing this book with you. Just tell you what kind of guy he is. So this book right here, How Animals Talk, is something that Josh recommended. Why did you recommend this book, and why did you feel compelled to send it to me? I appreciate it, absolutely, and I sent you a book as well. But why this book out of all the books that are out there?
Well, that book particularly I liked because it had a different type of approach than what I normally take in for my reading material. Excuse me. One of the things I really liked about it was it talked about animals in a very broad spectrum. And the guy who wrote the book talked a lot about how when he went out into the woods hunting animals, he would very often not see very many animals. However, when he went out without his weapon to just experience nature, animals were abound everywhere. And this hit him as like a very profound type of conundrum. And I thought it was interesting. The foreword of that book was written by Rupert Sheldrake, and he did some ridiculous experiments with dogs, learning to anticipate their owner's arrival back at home. And I believe in that book, he talks about, there you go, he talks about how this book was something that really kind of turned his mind around and pushed him away to consider the fact that animals think or at least interact with their environment in a way that we don't necessarily even consider to be real or possible. Personally, I'm an incredibly logical type of person. I look for scientific backing when it comes to things, and I do understand there's a certain amount of faith based in science as well. However, as was said by the great Richard Dawkins, you know, when you put your faith in aeroscience, planes fly. When you put your faith in engineering, bridges hold people up. You know, yes. It works.
Yeah, I think that, you know, sometimes even it becomes even some corners of the scientific realm becomes, you know, scientism too, you know, just like he speaks about that too. But, you know, I think that what we're talking about on these books is like there is something that these animals, every single one of them, are connected to. And it is something that needs to be considered, I believe. And I think that we are at the very surface of this. And what was interesting about Rupert Sheldrake was he was one of the gentlemen that had a banned TED Talk.
Yes.
He speaks about this stuff.
Yes.
And that's what I mean about scientism and like these little sects that they get into and these little, I don't know, like fraternities almost, you know, where they become peer reviewed. And, you know, science should be evolving with the new information that is presented. And there's some information here, and with technology comes along new access to information and new ability to record this information. And so Rupert Sheldrake, how he does his dog study, and it's the studying when their parent or when the dog's owner is coming home. And I think speaking of coming home, my wife just arrived. How about that?
There you go.
Synchronism for you there. Yeah. And so they, you know, they pick up on the wife or the owner coming home, and they'll get ready for their arrival a few minutes before they come home, and they try to boil it down to auditory cues, visual cues, anything, you know, but none of that is present.
Yeah.
And so what is it? What is it that is telling these dogs to get ready for the arrival of their parent? That's the question here. And I think Rupert Sheldrake's on the right track, and he's working for Oxford University. And so we'll see. I mean, I just got a comment here. Josh is a good guy and one heck of a bartender. Thanks, John.
Yeah, no, John's pretty solid, man. I got a lot of love for that dude, and I'd be happy to make you drinks whenever I get the next chance, man, for sure.
He even wants a strawberry daiquiri.
Okay, a blender and ingredients, man. I got you.
So yeah, man. What do you think about this stuff, and do you apply it to what you do with the animals that you have, and have you seen it, you know, reflected back to you? And I mean, what do you think it is? I mean, there's so many questions that I have.
Sure. You know, I mean, unfortunately, I don't have a huge amount of answers, but have you heard of the John Muir Trail?
John Muir Trail.
Yeah,
I have. What is it? So I've
the John Muir Trail is just you know, this big hiking trail that's named after this guy John Muir, and he was an incredible naturalist. You know, I think he was one of the founders of the Sierra Club, but I you know, don't quote me on that. But anyway, one of the quotes of his that I really, really liked is, when one tugs at a single thing in nature, he finds it attached to the rest of the world.
Wow.
And I think that's a very interesting perspective to have about animals in general, but it also goes a long way, I think, to explain some of these things that we view as, you know, sometimes supernatural, sometimes like extra abilities and things like that, that a lot of these animals in a very real sense interact with their environment in a way that human beings don't always have the opportunity to do so. You look at fish, how do fish move in a school? Well, now we know that the lateral line on fish has some sort of chemical response to the fish next to it, and they all move as one big unit, very similar to huge flocks of birds. But we don't necessarily understand a tremendous amount about how that functions, you know, really like scientific level. So I guess what it brings to me when I'm training dogs is open-mindedness more than anything else. Things like Rupert Sheldrake's experiments are a constant eye-opener to me and a constant reminder, if you let them to be, that really you don't know anything about anything, right? So I've got this like tiny peephole I'm looking through at the world, and I've got this real grand idea of what's happening out there, but in all reality, there's a bunch of stuff that we don't even know. And without getting too, psychonautic on you, there's less than 1% of all light that we can even see, and we can hear less than 1% of all sound that is made in the universe. So to think that we have everything in the palm of our hand, I think, is just a little bit silly. So when it comes to what Rupert did, I thought that was tremendous. And for folks who don't know, he varied a ton of different variables, exactly like you were referring to. Mm-hmm. People come home in different routes than they normally take at different times. And in some cases, I believe he was even having them drive different vehicles. And the dogs still displayed changes in their behavior that were consistent with their owner returning to them, which I thought was absolutely astounding.
Well, they know, Rupert's still compiling case studies, and he's looking for volunteers. And basically what they do is they put a GoPro on the dog, a GoPro on the owner, and a GoPro on the camera. And you do this over and over and over again. And then they take all that data and they look at it. And that's what we need to do as a, first step of that hypothesis is observation, or we have the hypothesis, then we observe, right? And so then we look at it and we watch what happens. And that's what we need to do more of. And he encourages it. People contacting him, if you are interested in being part of the study, I've reached out to him myself, just because I'm so interested in this stuff. And the other thing that he does is the science of being stared at, where he does it on the human element. Yeah. And I'm sure that people have done like these little experiments on their own, and if not, go out to eat and stare at somebody as and see how quickly they look right at you, man. Not in your area, but like boom, right in your eyes, And he took it a step further, where he had people sitting in a room and a group of people looking at a monitor, staring at this person sitting in a room, and the people that were sitting in the room would immediately turn and look right at the camera. And I mean, it's creepy,
For sure. And we don't really have, in my opinion, a super accurate word for what that is. It might be intuition. It might be something else that we can't really grasp as far as our vocabulary allows. But I think ultimately those are the types of things that science is exciting because of those things. The scientific approach to those problems, I think, is probably how we will inevitably get ourselves to that point. Yeah. John wanted the name of the book.
Yeah, How Animals Talk is the name of the book. I'll post up a link to this on Amazon if you guys are interested in getting this. It's definitely worth checking out. And it's just so, William J. Long is the one who writes it. Many sources have commented on the silent communication abilities of pets, but never before or not since the first can't even talk, dude. The first publication of this classic book in 1919, dude. This book was written in 1919. Has the subject of animal telepathy in the wild been so fully researched? How Animals Talk, it explores the phenomenon of vocal, silent, and even motionless communication among animals. From crow talk to instant herd communication, author William Long observes that animals are much more intelligent, emotional, and moral than we have traditionally thought, and that their capacity to sense the presence of other living beings is an innate ability shared by humans as well. Long explores numerous examples of animal behavior that defy conventional explanation, and seen in the context of his work, unexplained human abilities such as hey, ow. I just had a new dog join us out there, and they're kind of upset about it. Okay, Long's findings are based on many years of field observations. He believes in the importance of validity of anecdotal evidence, pointing out the dangers of conventional research and reducing animals to mere numbers, and noting how cold third-person prose to the scientific study objectifies animals. So that's kind of like the Pavlov and Skinner. You know, people need to realize that a lot of these studies were done in an acoustic chamber called a science lab.
Yeah.
And that's, hey, Ash, come here. I got my dog running around here. Ash. Everybody here's Ash. Get up here.
Well, it's funny you bring up, Skinner and Pavlov, because admittedly, they've given us some incredible practical tools for dog training.
Absolutely.
Not to the level of what John refers to as the spidey sense that the book is kind of talking about. But in a lot of cases, it's a very, very much a practical, hands-on approach. It shows you things that are, to a certain extent, more or less a law of learning, right? And I think that's incredibly important for us as animal trainers to have an understanding of those hierarchies, of those systems that are going to be applied to the learning of not just dogs and cats and whales and orcas and pigeons, but also to human beings, if we extrapolate it out, and it's quite obvious that we do. But I haven't met a ton of people who have really read a lot of Pavlov. It's not that fun to read, to be honest. It's super dry, it's scientific, it's heavy reading. For a lot of us, it's the type of thing that you got to read 2 or 3 times, then like, oh shit, that's what he's talking about, right? But when you do read it, you get a good idea about how much different those animals' lives were compared to the lives of your everyday dog who's living in a household or existing on a farm or wandering the street even. So when Pavlov did the salivation experiments, what not a lot of people talk about is the surgeries that were performed on these dogs before they did the experiments.
Yep. And the effect that they had on that behavior, And if people look at the pictures, man, I'm not going to post up a picture because they're god awful, but look at the pictures of these dogs. And I can't believe that they do not mention that one bit. They cut this dog's face off to get a cup in there. I mean, it's nuts.
It is. It's pretty intense. And albeit we've learned a bunch from that science.6however, what's the trade-off really, And so I like that book, How Animals Talk, because it is allegorical or anecdotal in a sense, because it's just one guy wandering the woods, kind of like taking in life as he sees it. But I think there's a certain amount that we can learn from that Pavlov would never be able to capture.
Yeah. Well, here we got some comments here. So pretty sure that's the scientific name. I think, Rupert Sheldrake coined the morphic genetic field. That's what he calls this field of influence, the morphogenetic field of influence that all life is connected to. And people's conscious mind kind of convinces us that we're not, and convinces us elsewhere, other things like we're superior and stuff like that, instead of knowing that these capabilities with our mind gives us kind of a moral obligation to be stewards and to understand these animals on their own level, and essentially to become these animals by proxy. And it's near impossible to do when we only exist in a human world. Like children, animals must be taught to break natural law. I believe they do so naturally. And that's a great comment. I mean, natural law is exactly what we're talking about here, is the law. If we told the animal that, when a man's law, I don't even know not to jaywalk. The animal's gonna be like, okay, cool, like, we're good. It's not gonna happen. The animal's gonna walk wherever they see fit, and so that's natural law in a nutshell. One of my favorite trainers, hi Josh, Erwin Zavala.
Erwin is out of New York City, and from what I understand, Erwin has started following his passion of training dogs a bit himself. I first met Erwin years ago training through the Leerburg Online University. He was one of my first students for my small dog course. So
great. Yeah, how was that, man? I mean,
see you, dude.
What a great experience, and what a great platform to be on, that Leerburg platform. We have
love for those dudes.
Was his research totally ethical, clear on whether or not put a tube in their mouth or a hole in their... Oh, he put a hole in their face, dude. Yep.
Yeah. They performed some surgery to get a tube. They basically cut the dog's face. They took the tubes that went from the salivary gland to the mouth and rerouted it out of the dog's face into a cup in some senses. In other cases, they did more dramatic surgeries where they were trying to put a device, I believe, on the dog's face. Either way, they were basically cutting the dog's face simply to make it easier to register how many drops of saliva came out of the dog's mouth.
And that cutting isn't taken into consideration. If that trauma on that salivary gland, I mean, it's just so many. It's adhered to as truth, but these dogs are not experiencing the rich external stimuli that's present in the world all around us. And chaos and order is the natural rhythm of the universe that we belong to. We could experience chaos at any moment. A school bus dropping off a bunch of children. Josh equals GOAT. What the heck is that? Joe Michael?
Greatest of all time. GOAT.
Oh, greatest of all time. There we go.
That's my friend Joe. He's a pretty nice dude. Yeah, he lives here in Buffalo, and he's got a Borbal named Nala that's like 120 pounds of sweetheart. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, John Sparks has become the Borbal guy. I mean, everybody's taking their Borbals to him. And Johnny, I got to have you on this live stream, man. We got to get him on here too.
For sure.
And I think that there are some other books, and one other book that I definitely picked up on when I was reading on this stuff that kind of illustrates and puts that there is a way to study this is this book called Primary Perception. The book is, it's expensive. I think I paid like $35 for it at the time. Sometimes it goes all the way up to $100. So on Amazon, totally worth it. But what's good about this book is that it shows us the actual graphs. What happened was Colonel Baxter, and it's written by Colonel Baxter. He studied the lie detector test, electromagnetic fields in human beings with the lie detector test. That's essentially what it measures. And what happens is that he decided to hook it up to a plant instead of the people, and he went and he pulled out a leaf of the plant, and this is the type of plant that he hooked it up to. And he noticed that there was a spike in the data, and they were excited because they saw, basically a feedback that there is life in plants. And so what they did is then they decided to burn a leaf. And here's where it gets interesting. When they decided to burn the leaf, they went and grabbed a match, and then they brought it back, and then they burnt the leaf, and then they went and studied the data, and they saw that there wasn't one spike but 3 spikes. And this first spike was when, and you can see on the cover of the book, when they had a decision to burn the plant, when they grabbed the matches, and then when they burnt the plant itself.
That's crazy.
So there is new technology that we have today that can help us study this on a totally different, deeper level. And this is just the start of it. But this stuff was over 100 years. I mean, this book was written 100 years next year.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
we haven't really accepted this as, there is something else there, that isn't just cut and dry. There you have it, vegans.
So, two things. Big hello to Gary from Straya. And Gary has a Malinois named Kaden, real fearful. But the training he's been doing down in Australia with another friend of mine's help, Tammy Peters, him and his wife have made some tremendous progress with that dog, from not being able to be out without exploding at the end of the leash constantly and everything, to meeting new people and, being in social situations. So that's a bit of my props to Gary, man. He came to my socialization workshop I did down there last year, and I was able to show him some possibilities, some hope, some progress, and he really just ran with it, man. So big props to that dude. The other thing I wanted to bring up is a book called The Hidden Life of Trees. And The Hidden Life of Trees talks a lot about the relationship not only of trees to their environment, but specifically trees and mycelium, which is kind of like the white spore that creates mushrooms, and how mycelium interacts with the roots of trees in a way that actually allows trees to live much more than we thought was ever really part of the equation. But they also cover in detail some of the different things that are starting to give us ideas about how plants are able to, with lack of a better word, think. So there were circumstances where trees were changing the chemical composition of their leaves and their greenery to become more bitter upon being eaten by animals. Not to mention, they did experiments of which they didn't even damage the plant whatsoever. What they did do was play audio recordings of caterpillars eating leaves near the trees, and then the trees changed their chemical compounds to become more bitter so they wouldn't get eaten.
Wow. Well, and Joe Rogan just had this guest on where they were talking about coyotes, and the coyotes would use their howl, and if they heard howls back, then their body would say, okay, cool, we don't need to produce that big of a litter. And so they would have like 4 or 5 pups.
Yeah.
But if they didn't hear any howls back, their body would kick into high gear, this reproduction system, and they would have, 10 to 12 pups. And it's wild, that they have these auditorial cues, that we wouldn't even think of. We need a second to kind of look at it, and I think we're even scratching just the bare surface, the minimum of how the capabilities of these plants and animals.
I couldn't agree more, man. And I think ultimately it defies logic to a certain extent. They don't have a brain. They don't have ears. How in the world could these things hear us? And then how do they have the central nervous type of system to translate this information into actions? There's a lot that we just have no friggin' clue about. And I hope these are the types of things that can really push that type of experimentation or research, whatever it needs to be, to give us some answers. And I believe the guy you were talking about is named Dan Flores. He wrote an awesome book called Coyote America. And I believe that was the guest on Joe Rogan. If it wasn't, I would imagine they got some of that info from Dan Flores. And Dan Flores has also done a really cool book on the American Serengeti. So for those of us who don't know, the Serengeti is kind of the Great Plains in Africa. It's where they have a huge amount of large ungulates or hoofed animals that eat their cud. And from there, he talks about the American Serengeti. And what a lot of people don't know is we had cheetahs in North America. We had lions in North America. The bison was one of the smaller ungulates we had roaming North America. We had huge sloths. We had woolly rhinos. It was an absolutely dominating part of nature and still is, you know, in some aspects. However, you know, we did quite a bit to kill that. After the Ice Age, there was an ice age in North America that at one point had about 2 miles thick of ice and covered almost all of North America. So just really killed a lot of stuff. But
Well,
yeah, man.
Isn't that how the Great Lakes were formed as well?
Oh, yeah. Great Lakes for life.
You're right there in Buffalo. Tosh from New Zealand, have you read much of Temple Grandin's work? Her perspective has made me pay much more attention to the detail of natural behavior. Animals in Translation and Animals Make Us Human are great reads. I agree wholeheartedly, and I have her books. I met Temple at a IACP event in Austin, Texas, I think in 2010, around that time. And I had an opportunity to speak with her, and very interesting lady. I mean, very interesting lady. And her mind, it views the world from a completely different perception than we have.
That's awesome.
What's that?
I said that's awesome. You got to meet her. That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity, and she spoke at the event as well. And I remember talking to her because I did some research on her and just how her brain works, and she says that she could see things in pictures much easily. That's how she sees stuff, and it's easier for her to become or see the world through the eyes of. She was working with cows, and she would actually get into these cow runs and get down, and so she could see what they were seeing. And it's so funny because I do the same stuff with dogs. You know, I'll even look. I'll be in their crate. You know, I got all these dogs here, and I might need to let one out here. And I'll get down if I'm working with an animal that's fearful, and I want to see what is making them fearful. And sometimes it's something completely different than what we really think it is. You know. So yeah, I definitely recommend Temple Grandin's work.
I agree 100%. Temple Grandin's got a really unique perspective, and I think part of that comes from, you know, just the way her brain obviously works in a different manner than most people. But she was able to kind of grasp that part of herself in a way that not everybody can, and she did a really good job of putting forth her ideas about how she thinks the animals interact in that way and why they behave with a certain stimulus in other manners. One of the things that kind of influenced my life from her, I'm an extremely fidgety person. I don't sit still well, and I have had insomnia for literally as long as I can remember. And that's not necessarily Fight Club level insomnia where you don't sleep for 5-6 days in a row. But when I do sleep, it tends to be short-lived. I wake up a lot. I have a really difficult time falling asleep. And once I do fall asleep, I don't always stay asleep. So in a lot of cases, my sleep schedule is all over the friggin' map. I recently, within the past like 3 months, I got myself a weighted blanket. It weighs about 22 pounds.
Yeah, I saw those.
It was a fucking game changer, dude. Like,
really?
For real?
Because you're describing my sleep patterns too. Maybe I should give it a shot. But I always get like claustrophobic, you know, if I feel like I'm wrapped up.
Well, and it's cool because you don't necessarily get all wrapped up in it. It's just you lay it over you, and the weight is incredibly difficult to describe the way it makes me feel when I'm going to sleep. It's not just comforting. It's a certain type of like, oh yeah, I feel like I can just chill here.
He's like, David Putnam says it. All right.
Thank you. However, I will say,
that's awesome. Best comment ever.
And to Dolan's point, I've been on pills previously. You know, I've been on pills for sleeping. I've had to take them because I could not sleep. You know, my mother
puts you into the bad kind of sleep. You put you way too deep, man, where you do not get the beneficial, you know, the sleep cycles. You know, they need 90-minute sleep.
Almost comatose. Yeah, it's not really. You know? My mom even talks about me being so young. I'm in a crib, but she would come to get me out of the crib, and I'd be awake, just staring off into space, not sleeping, awake, even as like a infant, like a baby.
Huh.
The most common place that I can fall asleep with consistency is in a car while somebody else is driving. Like I'm a sometimes not awesome road trip partner because if I'm not driving, you know, it's the way it goes. And no worries, Dolan. You know,
no, it's all good, dude.
It's all good, dude. We're here for fun. But
exactly.
The blanket to me, once I saw it, it actually clicked for me because of Temple.
I gotta see this stuff, man. You're making me freaking. I got a 25-pound blanket. So I mean, I remember they did like a Kickstarter. Can you just get it? Anywhere now? Here, let's see.
So you can get like the gravity blankets and stuff, but newsflash, they've been making these blankets for years for people like Temple Grandin. Because what did Temple used to do as a kid? She'd get in the squeeze box when they're going to brand animals, and it was basically the same thing. And so when I finally saw it online, I didn't know it was a real thing because I'm like not in that world. That was one of the first things that clicked with me is Temple Grandin would probably love that thing. And I got it just as like, hey, dude, if it helps, I'll spend the $150 on the stupid ass blanket. Who cares?
Sleep is priceless, you know.
Oh, believe you're preaching to the choir. But that blanket weighs 22 pounds. It's like a pain in the ass to fold and like move around. But you put it on yourself, and it is a super weird feeling of relief and calm, just like content. Fantastic. I couldn't recommend it more. But the reason I brought it up is because we were talking about Temple Grandin, and I think to a very high degree, there's a correlation there.
Yeah, and Britt says she loves her heavy blankets. I mean, it's like swaddling a baby. You know, not only that, but sometimes it's like putting these dogs in these crates too.
Yep.
You know, I wonder if we can put like a heavy blanket on them, you know, but sometimes boom, or putting a dog on a place or something like that, you know, once they just kind of relax and they know that they're taken care of. And that's it, is tapping into that energy of like calm and, you know, safe type of, you know, and that's where we need to be. That's where that mind really, really repairs itself. Our body repairs itself. And, you know, sleep is super beneficial. And I just read a book about the benefits of sleep. And, I mean, night out or blackout curtains is another big one. You know, blackout curtain, magnesium, chamomile, valerian. They say, you know, don't stay away from that melatonin because it's a hormone. And if you take too much of a hormone, then your body kind of gets used to that and won't create its own hormone. Like a thunder coat, that's exactly it. Yeah, great, Gary.
Yeah.
Like a thunder coat for dogs, putting pressure on them. And any coat, actually, you know, any coat, especially with neurotic dogs. You know, dogs don't, if they're cold or wet, they're not going to take these leaves and like slap them against them and make like little coat. You know, they're going to go and seek shelter. And so when they wear clothing, they're going to automatically associate that with you because you put it on them. And so absolutely, that thunder shirt is good. And I mean, every dog is an individual too, just like every person's an individual. And some of them are going to benefit more from it than others. But yeah, man, that's such a American Serengeti. Do you need to get out of here too? Here, I'm going to let a couple dogs out. Hold on one second.
You too.
I got it.
So a couple folks that I see in here is Britt Marie. Thanks for stopping by. If you guys want to check out that blanket, sometimes you can find them a lot cheaper by looking for what they call a sensory blanket. I do believe that they're primarily marketed towards people with autism or ADHD. I don't mean to just throw those terms out, but those are the ones I've seen associated with the blanket, or people with extreme anxiety. Like I said, I really just use it for my insomnia. And you know, nobody has been more pleased with that blanket than my partner, Jessica.
Did you ever get like restless legs and stuff and kicking, that kind of thing?
Not so much restless legs, just I can't fall asleep, so I would just get out of bed all the time and just I'd go ride my bicycle, or I'd go for walks with my Patterdale because she's always down to do some shit. And there was a lot of times where I would desperately need sleep. I'd be exhausted. I would start getting a sore throat because, you know, my immune system is getting compromised, not being able to kind of catch up and repair itself. It was the type of thing that was really becoming a problem. You know, I've tried every litany of things I can think of, and ironically, from what I understand, one of the most common things that is commented on as far as why people become alcoholics is a lot of them say it helps them sleep.
I believe it, man.
Is kind of crazy to think about. I don't know if it's, you know, just a common excuse or whatever, but there are plenty of times where, you know, let me take a glass of whiskey and I'm going to go take a nap or whatever.
They call it a nightcap for a reason, you know?
Yeah, for real. The other thing while we're on the subject, I found helpful a lot is an application for your computer called Flux, F.LUX. And it tones down all the white and blues on your computer and turns them to like oranges and reds in a certain hue. So you can still see what you're doing. You can still watch movies. Totally fine. But it dims all those brighter features. You know, you're trying to like lay in bed with your partner, turn your phone on with brightness, and it's like somebody just flashed a camera in your face.
Yeah.
And they've actually it's been shown that type of light really does affect our sleep patterns and our ability to get back to sleep, because that light then does not allow you to go back to your common kind of nighttime vision, which, for anybody interested, is actually why pirates wore eye patches. It wasn't because they lost their eye, but they have a patch on, they go below deck on the boat, take the eye patch off, and they have perfect night vision because they've been protecting it from the sun.
Love it, man. You know, and I'm looking right here. It's sleep industry worldwide. This is global, but it's an $80 billion industry, man.
Dude, it's crazy.
That's a huge number, folks. That's nuts. Just to help people sleep, sleep disorder. You know, but you know, I'm always interested in finding natural stuff out because, I mean, not only is sleep beneficial for our bodies, it gives a time to rebuild. And same thing with these dogs or these animals. It's very important for them to have a nice quality sleep, especially puppies. And so not only that, but I think that when we sleep deep too, we dreamed as well. And there's so many different purposes for these dreams. And that's another aspect of it. And I know these dogs dream because I see them, you know, running along and barking at something or whatever in their sleep. And yeah, that's amazing, dude. I didn't think that we were going to talk about weighted blankets, but I am going to be definitely getting one after this because I mean, it's important. It's very important. And we were shopping for beds, everything, you know, so it's something that should be considered. And
I can't say it's going to work for everybody, obviously, but you know, and Dolan was asking what's it called. Mine was just called a weighted blanket or a sensory blanket. So I would look at those two things and see if you can find yourself a good deal. Some of the super cheap ones, it's like some old school eBay shit where they're trying to sell you like the cover for a weighted blanket. Right. So just make sure you're getting what you're looking for. But I got mine on Amazon. And I couldn't be more pleased with it, for sure.
I mean, they are a little spendy. I mean, they're a couple $100, but what is a good night's sleep, or what is relaxing, or what is that, whatever that feeling is. And you like the purple mattress too, Dave. I had a little experience with purple that wasn't all that pleasant, but I'll definitely consider them again. Sorry, but okay. So Britt says that we have that around 5 to 6 p.m. It turns orange hue. Yeah, you can program a lot of your electronics to take that blue light out. You kind of see a blue light on my face here from the TV that I have up here. So Purple Mattress for Life. Know the apps for blues and whites.
Oh, that app is actually, if you have a Mac, it's f.lux, flux.
Flux.
If you have an iPhone and you're looking to get it on that, they actually have that feature inherent on all modern iPhone software. Yeah. It will dim.
Turn it off. Mine is at 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. I dim it all.
I do something very similar. But the one for my laptop is f.lux, flux, and man, it's a game changer, especially for somebody who can't fall asleep really easy. If I'm going to sit up and watch some silly nonsense on YouTube before I go to sleep, it's not blinding and setting my eyes into thinking the sun's rising or whatever foolishness is happening.
Oh man, when that hits you in the middle of the night, you're like, oh.
That is brutal.
It's like, and Dave's like, hop onto my purple. Promise it'll be pleasant. Easy there, Tiger.
Yeah, no. Dave has no chill. So you were talking about puppies getting full night's sleep. Is there something in particular you like to do to help get puppies to?
I keep them on a schedule, man. I keep them. They get nap time. I mean, that crate is essential. That's the first thing. The first night that these dogs are coming home to my house, they're in a crate. And I teach them that is a place that they calm down and sleep and be safe, And then I try to get them in. I try to get them up at a certain time every morning and try to get them to bed at a certain time every night. And then I have nap times every day. And I try to keep the distractions to a minimum. I try to keep the noise to a minimum. I'll play classical music for them, and I try to make a very inviting place for them to really, really conk out.
Cool.
I nurse them.
Obviously.
Cody to John. I nurse them all, and it's just don't tell anybody though. What do you do anything that
for really young puppies? The only thing I've found to be something that I think is helpful. I've had some restless puppies that I've been fostering for shelters and stuff like that, different rescues over the years. Like a large water bottle full of pretty warm water. Yes. Yep. And they like to cuddle up with that bastard just like its mom. Man, it's awesome. And I found that to be helpful for me in a bunch of circumstances where you got a bunch of whiny crybaby puppies in the middle of the night. Now, albeit I do also live in Buffalo, so understandably it gets kind of unreasonably cold here.
Right.
A hot water bottle for a lot of these puppies is a pretty sweet deal. They're pretty into it.
They're like, I'm not budging.
Yeah, no, they cuddle right up against it, and they're pretty happy to just sleep the night away. But otherwise, schedule, I think.
Go ahead. Sorry, I don't mean to talk over you.
Oh no, I was just saying schedule, I think, is huge. Otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, and if anybody has any other tips, we have a lot of dog professionals that are watching along with us. Go ahead and put them in the comments here. The more the merrier. Sometimes people, and we were talking about this with Patrick. I had Patrick Burns on last week, and hell of a guy. You got your dog, right? Your Patterdale.
Yeah, he pushed me to get Seif from this guy named David Mason, who's one of the few dudes who still breeds Patterdales for size and terrier work in the U.S. I was tapping my nose because Patrick, I have a great deal of respect and love for in a variety of reasons, but the dude's a madman. He's like an insane person. If you ever get the chance, if you ever are on the East Coast.
Oh, I'm going.
You're going to be near Virginia, D.C. area. Hit him up, and he will take you in the field and go hunting with his Jack Russells. And before he was working as what he does now, which is basically wrangle something like 300 lawyers for a living.
Right.
He worked for the Audubon Society for like 10 or 12 years. Mind blowing. Walking through the field, he's like, oh, that's this plant, that's this bird. Oh, did you hear that? That's this bird. A ridiculous amount of knowledge. He's insatiable with his appetite for learning. And as he always says, Patty knows. So, that dude is an absolute maniac, but of the highest regard that I can really give a compliment to. And the ladybird is fantastic, Erwin. The ladybird is... oh,
that's what you're talking about. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, what lady? What do I...
Yeah, ladybird is a nickname I gave to my Patterdale. It kind of started as a goof. She's tiny, in my opinion. She's quite beautiful. She's my little lady. And at a certain point, I just started calling her the ladybird. It just kind of flowed. I then later realized that there's a digging machine under Washington, D.C. that they utilized a very similar looking machine for Ocean's 13 that digs tunnels for subways and helped, kind of like dig the channel.
Yeah, I think we got one up here too.
Yeah, it's nicknamed Ladybird Johnson after, the first lady. However, yeah. I thought once I saw that, it was hilarious that a digging machine was named Ladybird, and I have a digging machine called Ladybird. Yeah, no, it worked out pretty well.
There you go, man. We got a couple of people chiming in on the puppy thing. John Sparks says absolutely on the hot water bottle thing. And then Britt Marie says that there's a stuffed animal that has a heartbeat you can heat up that has helped puppies sleep too. So great recommendations. And do you know what I call my little pup, who I think is beautiful as well? Sequoia. She's a little cattle dog that I got recently. I call her my piggy.
Yeah.
Because she grunts when she's happy. And she eats freaking, dude, like that dog is, well, put it down, man. I can't even. See, and it's so food driven. It's like a total different animal once food's even in the vicinity.
That's good, man. My ladybird only grunts when she's super pissed. If she's killing rats or chasing squirrels, it's like grunt. But yeah, no, like only when she's furious. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Awesome.
So I got a question for you, man. What have you, or what are you excited, kind of passionate about, stoked about in the dog world these days?
I'm just stoked about, just being able to move and evolve with the learning process that I have acquired through my observations of working with animals. And we spoke earlier about, how much more calmer I am now than when I first started, even with these puppies. I mean, I've got 3 new puppies in the house here, and my wife is the same. We just kind of just take them everywhere with us and just deal with it, and it's something that we, just kind of roll with the punches. And I believe that I'm a totally different, dog trainer than I was a few years ago, for the better. And I understand these animals more, and I'm thankful for that. But I definitely don't know it all. And I would like to get more into some precision work and some search and rescue stuff, and having more time to focus on my dogs. And that's what I'm working towards now. And and dogs with beards too. I'm always stoked on that, man.
Yeah.
What about you, dude? That's a great question.
Well, to be honest, in the recent weeks, I've been really pushing myself to achieve one of my kind of lifetime dog goals. Since I really got serious about being into dogs, and when I say that, that's kind of since I got serious about having dog training become how I make my money and my lifestyle, I've wanted to really get into ring sport. One of the ring sports. The problem is, in my part of the country, there's very, very few ring sport clubs. So if I want to go to a French ring sport club, I got to drive 3 hours. If I want to go to a PSA club, I got to drive 3 hours. If I'd like to go to a Mondio ring club, I got to drive 3 hours, right? So it actually makes training a lot less likely. You know, even though it's something I'm really passionate about, it's not always possible for me to take 6 hours out of my day to just drive, you know. And recently I was in Belgium, and I had a chance to go to a Belgian ring sport club that was run by my friend Bart Ballone.
Oh, the man. The man, Bart. Dude, he says that I look like shit and I need to shave.
Yeah, man. No, Bart is something else, man. I've known the guy for
I love that guy.
And recently it's kind of come to the point where I feel pretty comfortable calling the guy a friend, and I'm pretty happy with that, because when I really got into training dogs, he was somebody I looked up to intensely. He had a lot of skills that I wished I possessed, and he had a lot of knowledge that I wanted to have and get my hands on. So I went to Europe because my partner Jessica was competing in roller derby. And she made the World Cup team for Team Indigenous because she's Native American. And so we went to England so she could compete in roller derby, which is basically, you know, the type of roller skates we all learned when we were little kids skating.
Oh yeah, we got the rat city roller rink here.
And so we went out there for roller derby, but then after that we just did some traveling just for fun. So we went to Belgium, and I'm a tremendous beer nerd. I love beers.
Oh yes, I know this.
I save them, like I cellar them like wine. I hoard them like a greedy bastard, and I really enjoy drinking beers. That was one of our main reasons for going to Belgium, was to be able to go to some of these breweries that are older than the United States. And it was freaking mind-blowing, man. It was awesome. But one of the real kind of feathers in the hat for me was we got to go to this ring sport club that Bart runs and hang out while they train dogs at their ring sport club, and then drink some Belgian beers at the Belgian Ring Sport Club's clubhouse and just hang out for the day. It was tremendous. But one of the things Bart said to me as we were walking from the field to his house, which, newsflash, is right next door to the field.
Right.
He said, "This is why I train here, and I've always trained here. Because if I have to drive 2 and 3 hours, eventually I just stop doing it. I'm very passionate about what I do, but the fact of the matter is, it's not always feasible for me to drive the 3 hours, right? So I stopped going. Personally, I've been incredibly interested in ring sports for a long time, and Dolan, I'm gonna answer what is ring sport in a moment,
right? But
I've got the chance coming up to become certified as a decoy in Mondio ring sport. And I've wanted a certification in ring sport for a long time to be a decoy, because that's going to make it a lot easier for me to open up a club near me where I don't have to drive 3 hours.
Right.
And I can have folks come and we train together. So to answer what is ring sport is a protection sport, one of the biting sports. Ring sport encompasses a huge variety of different types of sports, the main 3 being Belgian ring sport, French ring sport, and then Mondio ring sport. There are a variety of different sports that are similar enough that I suppose they could be kind of called ring sport. But the big things about ring sport are the decoy, or the guy who gets bit by the dog, wears an entire suit, which differs from IPO and Schützen. In that sport, IPO or Schützen, which are basically the same thing now, they only wear the one sleeve, so the dog always bites the forearm. However, in ring sport, the dog can bite your forearm, he can bite your bicep, he can bite your chest, he can bite your thigh, he can bite your calf. Anywhere that's padded, the dog can target. So it gives a totally different type of look to the dog rather than the presentation of Schutzhund, which is very like, here's the bite.
Yep. And an Olay in it so you don't stick,
Yep.
stuff
So
that dog too.
one of the big things about Schutzhund was kind of designed as a test, obviously to test the dog. However, the test at this point is more so in some aspects designed, in my opinion, to have the dog look good. I'm always going to present the arm. The arm is never going to move once I present it. It's always here, come bite it, and the dog bites it. However, in ring sport, they'll present that, and at the last second, move, push the dog away. You can't bite me. They call it a skeeving in French ring sport. But essentially, the biggest difference that I can kind of break it down to is that Schutzhund is very good at making the dog look good. Ring sport is very good at making you, your training, and your dog look terrible because it tests you in a far more dynamic range.
Yeah, but the overall outcome is a much more superior dog because they're not just looking for an easy kind of placement. They're dynamic. They got to discern in the situations by split seconds. And that's real world, right? If they encounter a situation where they need to apply this training in a real world situation, it's not going to be like the freaking cricket isn't going to be like, hit my arm. They might.
I totally agree.
But it's something that I absolutely love it, man. And it's an intense type of training too. Whoops, I just zoomed in on this thing. We got some comments here. We got Hannah's in the house. Whoop whoop. Josh's trip to Europe. Nice. And then
sensation.
The sweetest sensation. She's moving up to the Pacific Northwest here with me, and we got to get her on one of these live streams. Maybe I'll have her in person. We'll have her do a live stream.
Oh yeah.
Josh has a podcast. It's called the Philosophers and Madmen podcast. And are you done with that?
I'm definitely not done. I'm just lazy and somewhat unproductive. And to be perfectly honest, there's been a tremendous amount of chaos in my life the past few months. And I do that podcast with my really good friend Dave Putman, who's been commenting some inappropriate shit on here. Me and Dave started this podcast actually 2 or 3 times before we ever went live. Funnily enough, we started the podcast to be his journey from a guy who worked in insurance to a dog trainer. But just the cards fell where they were, and he became a dog trainer a lot sooner than later. And so we are still going to be doing the podcast. I'm trying to get myself to the point where my travel doesn't interfere with the podcast as much. So I've been doing a tremendous amount of travel. Dave's been going through some changes in his world as well. So he's running his own business now. He's getting that up and running. And really, Dave and I are incredibly passionate about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and that takes up a lot of our time as well. So between that, me trying to get my certification in Mondio Ring as a decoy, and just life interfering with life, it's been a while since we put out a podcast. On top of which, to be perfectly honest, we haven't been crazy stoked about the sound quality with some of our podcasts because a lot of our guests are in a situation we're doing now, and to record the audio that's coming through your laptop sometimes comes out terribly and is hard for people to listen to. So that's, honest to God, the number one criticism we've gotten about our podcast is just the sound sucks, which, believe me, nobody's more displeased with it than we are, which is kind of why we've been trying to monkey around with different microphones, different setups, different applications and software to make it work better. But believe we are going to be coming back sooner than later. We've been
stronger than ever.
Yeah, stronger than ever. But we've been discussing it quite a bit in our recent weeks. Now that I'm back from Europe and like we're in the same city again, so we can meet up. And I'm guessing we've done pretty much every single one of our podcast episodes has been, I believe, at this point with a guest. But I think our next one is probably going to be without guest, so that we can just sit down, kind of get back in the groove. And as somebody who does as much as you do, you know exactly what it's like to kind of get your voice back in the rhythm that it needs to be to have a good podcast. So it's certainly coming, dude. I can't tell you how pleased it makes me that people even give a shit enough to ask if we're doing another one. That really makes me smile. So thanks a lot, Dylan. But yeah, man, hopefully we'll be back before you're too bummed.
So Erwin wants to know if you're doing ring sports for just to stay in the sport, or are you wanting to get into protection work and apply it to real world, maybe train protection dogs, or is it just something that you're...
I'm incredibly interested in ring sport for the same reason I became really interested in dog training to begin with. It's something I'm really passionate about because it has so many different applications. And I don't just mean that in the like, oh, I can send my dog to like bite the bad guy. Not really what I give a crap about. As far as I can tell in my life, I'm never going to like truly need that. And if I do, I guess
we'll benefit too, yeah.
But ring sport, in my opinion, is one of the highest levels we can ever test a dog at. Specifically, obviously, the biting dogs, right? We don't test Labradors in ring sports. We use like the NAVDA trials and field dog trials for stuff like that. And the upland game bird dogs, they get tested in their own way. And, the herding dogs get tested in their own way. But when it comes to the amount of intensity, the amount of difficulty, the amount of athleticism that's required, the amount of training that's required to make this work, and the amount of precision that's required to make it work and look graceful, I find a hard time finding an equal. So I think ring sport has a tremendous amount to offer dog trainers in general, which is why I'm interested in it. I like it not just for the potential of getting into protection work in a more traditional sense of like training protection dogs and selling them to people. I don't have a tremendous interest in that, but I do have an interest in the way those dogs are trained and the meticulous attitude you have to have in relation to how those dogs are trained in order to create a system that's going to be successful. So ring sport is something I think everybody should give a look to. And I'll tie two things together. Dave and I did a podcast with Michael Ellis, who, if you guys don't know who Michael Ellis is,
he's a man.
I would totally look him up. Dude has an incredible brain for dog training. And in my opinion, more so than his brain for dog training, but his way to convey an idea about dog training to other people so that they can absorb it quickly and without very many conflicts. One of the things he and I and Dave really agreed heavily on was the fact that I think everybody who's a professional dog trainer or anybody who wants to be a professional dog trainer should train their dogs in some sort of precision behavior before they get into training dogs. So a formal competition heel or a retrieve where your dog never chews the object and will pick up anything and bring it to you calmly and forcefully. Training these types of precise behaviors takes a level of patience, meticulous eye and commitment that I think not everybody really understands until they recognize, oh, getting a real formal heel on your dog, head up, competition, walks with you without looking where they're going. That's like a year-long program. Our clients never want that, right?
Daily, working at it every single day. Yeah. I mean, you might have a day off or two, but it's like, it's not something that is a push button.
No,
this takes constant focus. It takes constant awareness, and it's like the excellence of dog training, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah, no, it's something I feel really passionate about, and I've been a lazy turd about for a long time as far as getting into it, because it's, and that's the reason I brought up Bart and his ring sport clubs. It's so far from my house to participate in those activities that it stops becoming a priority.
Yeah.
When you have to drive 6 hours to go do something, it usually falls off the radar a little bit.
They say that necessity is the mother of invention, So maybe that's it, man. I can see you. I can tell already that you're really into this, and I look forward to seeing where you take it, dude. Cher Woods has a question for you, Josh. Josh did a little dog course at Learburg, and so that's what Cher is referring to. Question for Josh about small dogs. Do you have a lot of small dog clients? I purchased your small dog training on Learburg. If yes, do you find it harder for them to change their relationship with the dog versus big dog clients? Excellent question.
So yeah, the things that I generally will tell people with small dogs is there's basically two big things I tend to find clients or human beings in general in their mind suss out as different between large and small dogs. The biggest one is what they allow these dogs to get away with. A small dog, because it cannot inflict as much damage as a large dog, tends to be given a different rule structure because it's not as dangerous. How many people have we met with a Shih Tzu that gets all like nasty and growls if you get near it?
Laugh at it. They laugh at it. They encourage it by, and that's what, and then that's why I have people all the time, they're telling me that this dog is a freaking maniac, and it's like this dog. I'm like, how old is the dog? They're like 6 or 7, and then they say, we used to think it was cute.
Yeah, of course. And I've heard that same exact thing, 100 times. I do have a bunch of clients with small dogs, and like it or not, I've somewhat gained a name for working with small dogs because the first course that Learburg put out for me was geared towards small dogs. So it is very common that I'm kind of, hey, he trains a lot of small dogs, and I do, and I freaking love training small dogs, man, because I like training them in a way that helps people change their mentality about the dog. So the first thing I always tell people that's different about a small dog is what they let it get away with. And secondly, the amount of damage that it's susceptible to.
Right.
So I have a small dog that I live with all the time. She weighs 13 pounds, my little pride and joy. But when I take her for a walk, if somebody's dog charges me and I'm walking a 13-pound dog, she is in far greater danger of being killed or grievously injured by a somewhat pissed off dog who charges me on the street compared to my 70-pound pit bull who can at least deter a German Shepherd from killing them with greater ease than my 13-pound dog is. So I also have to be conscious of that. It's not just, hey, I have a small dog, she should be treated exactly the same. I don't believe that because they're different. I don't think a beagle should be treated like a Malinois, and I don't think a poodle should be treated like a Borbal. They're not the same thing. If they were the same thing, they'd all be able to do the same job. Yeah. But to a great extent, they have different skill sets, we'll say. Not to mention physical traits.
Well, skill sets and wants and desires and motives and everything, and there, and that's why it's important to know what this dog was initially bred for, and to not consider that is going to be a big problem. Ted F. Diamitis, you two are beautiful men. Just saying. Right back at you, brother.
Much love, Ted. Much love, man.
Much love, Ted. Ted has. Ted, will you put a link up to your kids? He has a course on Udemy about dogs and kids, and this guy's amazing. Hannah, hell yeah.
I'll be back in 2 seconds, man.
Okay, yeah, do your thing. I'm going to go solo here. So it says, talk to Chad. He has a good podcast set up, and that's Chad, and the producer of Chad's podcast helped me with my podcast stuff. So I'll definitely tell Josh. I'm literally like 5 blocks away. Pressure us, David. Hilarious. I pity the guy who tries to break in on Bill only to meet 50 dogs. Yep. You're going to have a rude awakening when they come in here and think that they're not going to have any confrontation here. Almost like a doctoral thesis before getting a PhD. I don't know what that's referring to. So, yeah. So I just got little dogs as well. I have little cattle dogs, and then my wife just got a rat terrier. And what Josh is saying is absolutely true. I mean, people don't take into consideration the amount of damage that a bigger dog can do immediately. These dogs are a fifth of the size of these dogs. And just sheer physics, they don't have to bite them or anything like that. The dog could just be running by and clip a little dog, and that can hurt them pretty bad as well. It doesn't have to just be a confrontation. It could be dogs just zipping around a dog park, and we have a little dog area at one of the dog parks here for that reason. So, just know that it's our obligation to be stewards of these animals, even the little ones. And even though we want them to be cool, act like big dogs, and be confident, but not overconfident, we need to kind of be their agents in life and look out for them to make sure that they're not set up for failure or put in a situation that might hurt them pretty bad. Britt says exactly, it drives me insane. Just because your dog is small doesn't mean it can bark at people or try to lunge or try to bite. What if that were a shepherd or a pit? Also, you need to pick up its shit.
100%. Britt has always a way with words. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And I love the littles. I do too. I love that they say that they aren't the same. It's not the same. I mean, it's the same to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. But then, once just like the big dogs aren't going to go under a hole or, go into some nooks and crannies that these little dogs can.
Well, for example, 2 things that I oftentimes use as an example when it comes to large versus small dogs is if I step on the foot of a Dutch Shepherd, they go, oh, and pull their foot out. They might make a sound like, dude, why? Like, right? They always give you that look of betrayal, like, what did I do to this? But they pull their foot out. They will go about their business. I step on the foot of a Chihuahua, I'm going to the vet now. I've potentially just crushed your entire set of metatarsals. Your freaking foot is this big. It's totally different from a physical standpoint, right? I have a good friend. He's got a Dutch Shepherd named Nazgul, named after the ring raids, right? From Lord of the Rings. If this dog bites you, we're talking hospitalization. Serious trauma. If a Chihuahua gets so frothing at the mouth, pissed off, that it lays into you with its entire being, its heart is in the fight. Well, you go, dude, get off me. Right? Like,
get your dog. Yeah.
Enough is enough. You're being a jackass, right? It's totally different, right? Yeah. The other thing I point out is watch how a Jack Russell that is like motivationally trained, right? He wants to do the behavior. You tell a Jack Russell to lie down. Bang, dog's lying down. Tell a Great Dane the same thing. A motivationally trained Great Dane, he's got to like waddle his big ass into it down. Not because he doesn't want to do it. It's not because he's trying to be dominant or obstinate or he wants to like flip you the bird like I don't have to do obedience. There's a physical difference there. No matter what that Great Dane does, it will never reach the speed capacity of my Patterdale. Won't happen. You can't hold them to the same degree. However, there's a lot of the overarching rules or constructs that we have utilized to live in harmony with these animals that can be applied to both, and we need to be intelligent about how we do that. So I guess that's one of the big things I really try and harp on people with small dogs is, yes, they're dogs, and the more you treat them like just a dog minus the word small, the better off you're likely to be. That doesn't mean I advocate for disregarding some of the principal differences that are going to be inherent because of nothing other than their size.
Yeah, are there any commands that you emphasize on a smaller breed versus a larger breed?
Yeah, man. Drop it. Come when I call you. Like, really,
yeah, recall is a huge one, man. Especially because what you were saying. If we see a threat coming, I need you back here now.
100%.
In case I might need you to, and that's what I teach my dog, to jump up on me when I clap, you know, and then I'll catch them, you know, just in case I need you, and that's immediate. As soon as I clap, boom, I need you up here, and then we'll assess the situation. But it's not about me carrying around just so they can get a better vantage point. It's actually, there is a threat. I don't want this dog messing with my dogs, you know, because my little dogs can be butt heads too. You know, they're not rude. I mean, they can be rude to other dogs just because that's their nature as a cattle dog. You know, they're very pushy, and they can be butt heads. So that's the first thing that I'm teaching those little dogs is come right back to me right away. And if you get outside this little circle of me, I'm going to call you right back. Yeah, leave it is another one. They're always getting in the crap.
I'm a huge advocate for training small dogs as closely obedience-wise to large dogs as possible. You know, I tell a lot of my clients, if they want a really well-behaved small dog, stop calling it a small dog and treat it like a Rottweiler, because then that shit is not funny. It's not funny when your 100-pound Rottweiler's on the couch growling at you because you're too close to it. That's scary.
Yep.
And that's a big deal. And people treat it like a big deal. But when it's a small dog, they go, oh, isn't he silly? Or isn't he, oh, he's just such a little rascal.
Yeah.
I don't know about all that.
Yeah.
So the other thing I think is pertinent that you just pointed out, some of the innate behaviors of the types of dogs that we select to live in our homes. Right? Nobody gets a golden retriever to go compete in ring sport.
Right.
It's not going to happen. However, there's plenty of people who go get an Australian cattle dog and they want it to just be like this lazy ass couch potato.
Yeah, totally.
Who wants to like lump around the house. And
they're good looking dogs. They're handsome dogs. You know, they got a lot of different colors, a lot of different like features with their markings and stuff. But that's as far as that should go. And people don't take into consideration that these dogs are meant to drive large livestock and meant to fight the hawks of them to get them to move. You know.
Oh yeah. And, I've been to Australia a couple times. I've had the pleasure of going down there and teaching some seminars and getting to meet a bunch of people down there. And I can highly advocate anybody who gets the chance, go to Australia.
I'm going. Dude, I'm coming down to Australia, everybody, just so you know. I'm coming. I'm working out with Tosh, and I would love to meet all of you and all your dogs too.
It's a real perspective change. It's similar enough that you don't feel nervous about like, oh, I don't speak the language. Although when a bunch of them get together, you don't really speak their language, right? Like everything is different, but it's different enough that you know damn well you're in another part of the world, man. It's really like that. However, they have a tremendous amount, not surprisingly, of cattle dogs. They're everywhere. Cattle dogs and kelpies are like falling out of trees there. And it's fantastic for people who like those dogs. But if they were that common here, man, oh man, there'd be a lot of people who got holes in their jeans, you know?
Yeah. And
as they are happy to point out, they're dogs that were bred and designed to get kicked by a cow and be like, yeah, woohoo, we're going back to work. So,
dude, I've seen it. I've seen a cattle dog grab onto a cow, this cow fling this dog, the dog go, foo, 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 hit the ground and zip right back, dude. And I was just like, oh, okay. That's what we're working with here, man. And it was like, that was the only thing that dog was interested in. Here's a couple questions for you. Cher says, here's a hot topic for most trainers, picking up your small dog. 100%, I will pick up my smalls if there's a threat. Absolutely. Safety. A lot of trainers disagree with that. What's your take on it? I mean, I'll give mine. Absolutely, I agree with you. My dog is very important to me, and if there's a threat, I'm grabbing that dog and picking them up. I teach them to jump on me. Like I was saying earlier, I give a clap, and they jump up into my arms.
So I 100% agree with you on that. I teach my small dogs to jump up to me whenever I can, unless I'm working with like a real elderly small dog, and then I'll just scoop your little ass up. But every small dog I can, I want to teach to get up on me if I can. Secondly, if you're picking up your dog, small dog or otherwise really, but a small dog specifically, which are the dogs that most people will scoop up if there's a problem, I want you to keep in mind a couple things that can become an issue, okay? And so I think there's a lot of trainers that have an issue with this because picking up a small dog can sometimes be seen as, oh, I just carry my dog around, right? I carry it around. This is what I do. It's a purse dog type of thing.
The best thing I heard was Mark Goldberg say, little dogs that get carried around get carried away with their behavior.
Yes. Yeah. No, Mark is a bit of a dog training poet. I'll give him that, man.
Mark-isms. There's a thing in the dog training or the dog training industry called Mark-isms.
Yeah, and Mark Goldbergism or whatever. Yeah, Mark-ism, dude. I first met him, man, it's probably got to be 4 or 5 years ago now. I first met him at the Monks of New Skeets Monastery. For the very first time, they opened their monastery for a seminar. And I went up there with Tyler, and we camped on the Battenkill River, spent the days at the monastery hanging out with Mark and the monks. And then at night, we went back to the campsite and drank a bunch of bourbon by the riverside. It was freaking awesome. But yeah, you got away with words for sure. But when it comes to picking up small dogs, the things I always tell people to keep in mind are physics-based, right? The gravity is a real thing. So you pick this dog up. Most dogs don't explore things with their hands. They don't touch on things. They bite them. They put their mouth on stuff. There's a tremendous amount of us who have experienced some version of like a dog putting their mouth on us, not breaking your bones or busting skin or even hurting you, but they want to like do some of this. And you see it all the time with new stuff. They come over, they poke it with their face, they grab it. They want to, like, what the hell is this all about? The problem is, even if this dog charging you that caused you to pick up your dog is not acting aggressively, but exploratively or curiously, and they reach up and grab your dog, gravity can tear them. As unfortunate as that is to have to talk about, that's a real thing. So in my opinion, if you're being charged by a dog or some sort of threat that makes you feel like I need to pick my dog up, you need to put yourself in a situation where the dog that is charging you cannot get to that dog. And if you're holding it right around like waist level, that other dog can probably get themselves up there. So if you're going to have to lift that dog, I highly recommend, if it is like absolute catastrophe, I need to prevent this dog from doing physical damage to this animal, I want that dog high enough that they can't get to it, or they can't get to it easily while I'm also kicking them away from me, right? Because my dog's safety is well and beyond my number one concern at that point. But if I'm just holding the dog here and they jump up and they bite, when they fall down, they can do some really ridiculous damage because of how the physical world works.
Well, those jaws are no joke, and the veracity and the speed that these dogs can cause damage is pretty remarkable, and especially if they have an opportunity to do so, they might seize it. So absolutely, and I teach one of my dogs to get up on my shoulders too. I hike and stuff, and I put them on my backpack, and I go through rivers, and I want my dog up on my shoulder so I can forge a river or climb up something, and they can safely be in a spot that they can ride that. I mean, ride me. And that's it too. You know, sometimes when we're out hiking, a big dog is jumping up over this log that is 3 times the height of this little dog, you know?
Yeah.
And not only that, but the running the distance, you know, the big dog is pace is, you know, a lot more than that little dog. And so they're running 2-3 times the amount. Yep. And so let me go through some of these comments, and then I got to sign off here pretty soon, man. This has been so fun, dude. A lot of people getting the wrong breed for their family. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, no doubt.
People not doing their homework, you know, not realizing that this is a decade decision plus, and they go to a pound or something. They look at a dog, and that's about as far as it goes. Like we were talking about with the cattle dog, you know, very interesting markings, but not taking into account what this dog was bred for, and how this dog's mind works, and the amount of work that it's going to take to manage this dog, train the dog, and that's it, you know. So, and then we have, I have to put a chill on our golden on sheep once. It was hilarious. Sheep have no respect for a golden. Sheep have no respect for a golden. Just like we were talking about with Animals Talk, you know, they know and they can read. And you watch a collie, dude. Watch their eyes, man. That's
for sure.
100%. They look at a sheep, and then it's like, and that sheep picks up on that, man. Where the golden retriever's coming out like, you know, and the sheep's like, oh, cool. I'm not, you know, look at this. Get a hold of this guy, you know, and that's it. You know? So. Is it bad to pick up a large dog? I've done it before just as a reaction. Sure. I mean, if your back can handle it, you know, if the dog's okay with it, I'm sure, you know.
I would say the same thing that I say about a small dog. When I pick up a dog, I'm removing the dog's ability to maneuver around the other dog, to defend themselves in a realistic way. Now, I'm not encouraging dog fights with loose dogs by any stretch of the imagination.
But they happen.
However, if I'm holding a large dog and the dog that is charging me does grab a hold of them, what I end up with now is a large dog whose face is right near my face. In most cases, when people pick that dog up, the head's going to be in this general area. So if all hell breaks loose, like worst case scenario, my head is getting bit by the dog's head, and the dog that is in my arms is susceptible to a lot more damage as well, not just because they're defenseless in a certain extent, but also because if that dog does grab them, there's a tremendous amount more damage that can be inflicted due to gravity that we were talking about with small dogs. Is it a bad idea to get your dog used to picking them up? Shit, no. I pick my large dogs up all the time. Why? Because I gotta like pick them up and set them on stuff, right? Like, hey, let's come up here. Or as those dogs start to age, they can't jump into the car. They can't run up the stairs. So right before I went to Europe, you know, Jess and I had a pretty shit run of life in general. But you know, one of the things that happened was my dog King, who was about 14 years old, and you know, like, got me into dog training. You know, he's the reason I became a dog trainer. He died, you know, and
I'm so sorry, brother.
Before that, he couldn't get up and down the stairs very easily. He couldn't get into the car anymore when we're going to go for a hike or things like that. I had to pick him up. If I waited until he was 10 years old to start picking him up, that's a totally different experience than a dog who's been picked up as a young dog, as an adolescent, as an adult, and just kind of understands, oh, yeah, well, sometimes this jackass picks me up.
Yeah.
You know, like we just go about our day.
Yeah.
Being able to condition them to those types of things is really important. And, you know, I don't advocate, for a variety of reasons, you know, just walking around with any dog in your arms all the time. However, sometimes it's a necessity, so I do think it's important that we help desensitize them to that.
Absolutely. And is that VB, Josh? What is that? Who's this? Is that
I'm
VB?
guessing that's Victoria Bitters. Sharonica is a badass dog trainer from
Welcome,
the
Sharonica.
Brisbane area of Australia. And Victoria Bitters, regardless of what American television will like you to think, is the most readily available beer in Australia. It is not sponsored. So,
Okay, there we go.
but no,
It's a beer. It's a beer thing.
what I'm drinking is a Genesee Spring Bock beer. You know, I do appreciate all the love, guys. You know, thank you for all the condolences. And I know I'm going to give a shout out here to my friend Alex Edwards, who's from Melbourne, Australia. Alex, my brother from another mother over here. But man, he also just recently went through a very similar issue. And
yeah, man,
there's nothing that prepares you for it. You know, Tracy, much love to you. I know you've also recently dealt with this issue. Not to get on a real downer of a note, but
it's a fact of it,
guys.
You know?
I really appreciate the condolences. You know, King was a huge part of my life and meant a lot to me. So, thank you very much.
Yeah. Well,
and Victoria Bitters is a pretty shit beer. So, you know.
There you go. You know, and that's it. Is we.
Great to meet you as well, Dolan.
My guy is 14. He's going to be 14 next month.
I don't know if Bill just decided he was done or.
Oh, are you here? Can you guys hear me?
He's out.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me, Josh? Uh-oh, hold on. Can you guys hear me?
Newsflash.
I don't know. Let me know in the comments.
I'm coming back to Australia.
Right now.
As if anybody's surprised, that place is fucking excellent.
Here, let's see. Much love, brother. Awesome show, guys.
Always looking forward to catch up with my Aussie fam.
Hold on. Let me see if I can do this again. Yes, you can hear me. Okay, here. Let me see if I can do.
This year is going to be a pretty big year for travel for me. Got to go to Europe for the first time, which is most excellent. I will say, though, I went to Iceland. Iceland was really cool. I don't mean that as a pun. It was cold, but ironically, Buffalo, when we were in Iceland, even though Iceland had a huge storm, Buffalo was colder than Iceland, which is basically all you need to know about Buffalo, New York. Jessica and myself went out and got a fish and chips one night. 2 fish and chips. 2 pints. The bill was $76 American.
Wow.
So if you want to go to Iceland and see the Northern Lights, they are absolutely amazing. Beautiful, natural, spectacular, ridiculous things you can see just happening in the sky. Everything else you do there is ridiculously expensive. 4, count them, this many, 4 boneless, skinless chicken breast at a grocery store, $60 American. If there's anything else you need to know about Iceland, I guess that pretty much sums up my experience. We saw some incredible stuff. We went to a bunch of hot springs and had the benefit of staying with some now, you know, cool friends we have in Iceland. It was something else, but that.
Okay, so I brought him down. We're having a little glitch here on the back end, and we can't hear each other, but you guys can hear both of us, and so I'm going to bring him back to see if he can, if this helps, if he can hear me again. Josh, can you hear me? Crap, he can't hear me, dude. Here. I'm going to bring him back. I'm going to bring him back down here, and then. I'm going to see if he can log back on here in just a second. Sorry, folks, we're having a technical difficulty. Can you? He's making me laugh with the faces that he's making. I'm going to see if he can log back on there. So he was talking about Iceland, and I'm going to see if I can Iceland is covered with green, and Greenland is covered with ice. No lights for me. So, you guys, we've been having a wonderful broadcast here. I wonder, I'm going to bring him back. Hey, guys, some of you said you can hear me, but I can't hear or see Bill. Yep, so that's it, is that he cannot hear or see me. Come back on. I'm going to have him and sign off. On and sign off here. And then, you guys, if you need to get a hold of Josh, check out his... All right, Josh, can you hear me?
How about now?
Can you hear me? Dude, we can't hear each other. This is killing me.
I'm just going to keep talking as though everybody can hear me, regardless of whether or not they can. So, you know, do with that what you'd like. Iceland is covered with green, kind of, Kieran. It's covered with green in the summertime. In the wintertime, it's covered with snow and lava rock. Otherwise, I mean, the scenery is absolutely astounding. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Beautiful beyond belief. But otherwise, you know, it's crazy expensive.
I'm going to see that works. I'm asking him to log off and then log back in. Here I come.
Carrie, if you're still here, great to see you, lady. I hope Puma is kicking ass.
All right, you guys.
Gary and Darlene, I am coming back to Oz, believe it or not. I would love to see you guys while I'm down there.
Yeah, thank you guys very
Tash,
much. Here, let me.
Thank you.
All right, Josh,
Well, Kieran, our discussion kind of hit a whole bunch of topics.
The choice of technology. Yeah, check out
all over the place, really, from you know, weighted sensory blankets to animal telepathy, different things we're passionate about in dog training, and anything in between.
Here, I'm going to see if I can log him off here. All right, so here. Can you log? I'm going to see if he can log off. So, you guys, bear with me. I want him to come in and sign off. Here he comes. Okay, cool. Cool. He logged off. Now he's going to come back in. Let's see. Keep your fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Can you hear me, dude?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, we're back. Dude, I could hear you the whole time, and everybody could hear both of us. And I'm sitting there trying to talk to you, and you're just talking about this Iceland and shit. Dude, it's so awesome. We got it fixed, ladies and gentlemen. We are back, but we're basically. I wanted you to sign off in a proper way. So we're back. We just needed to figure it out, but that was quite a experience there. So bear with us. So, dude, what's your website? How can people get a hold of you? And if anybody's in your local area that is interested in doing ring sports as well, reach out to Josh. What is it?
All right. So my website is barefootdogtrainer.com or BF Canine Training. And that's BF letter K number 9 training.com. Either one will take you to the same website. I just own both names. So barefootdogtrainer.com. I try and keep that handle, pretty commonly on most social media. So Instagram is Barefoot Dog Trainer. On Facebook, it's just Josh Moran or BF Canine Training. But otherwise, that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Can you see the screen? Do I have it spelled correctly? BFK9?
Yeah, man. Yep.
There
Killer. Excellent.
So that's it. And then also you're on Learberg, so you have these courses on learberg.com.
Yep. Yeah. I got some stuff on Learberg. I've got another course in the works actually that I'm supposed to be putting live relatively soon. Basically, just something I put together covering the place command, how you can teach it, but then also how you can use it for problem-solving behavior of all sorts. It's a pretty simple thing for most of us that are training dogs, but it's one of the commands that I think has such a diverse range of applications that the average pet dog owner should probably know it. Even if you're not interested in precision or competition style obedience, it gives you a huge amount of opportunities to train your dog in a way that becomes very practical and productive. So it's something that I'm pretty stoked about as well.
Well, I like the place. It kind of gives them an off switch, lets them calm down, lets them just be. That's what I tell people. Your dog just needs to be, man. He doesn't need to be the center of attention. And not only that, but we use it for when we train the dog to let them just be and process the information. Soak time, we call it a lot of times. So
yes, soak time, latent learning for sure. Yeah, that's important.
Latent learning, that's right, absolutely.
The other thing I would add, it's not updated hardly ever. We haven't come out with an episode in a real long time, but Philosophers and Madmen is my wild friend Dave and I just talking about whatever it is that kind of interests us. So our podcast originally was going to cover his kind of adventure to becoming a dog trainer, but inevitably kind of devolved into basically us exploring things that people are passionate about. So things we're passionate about, things our guests are passionate about, and how we can kind of, discuss those topics. So we've had a lot of dog trainers on there mostly, but we've also had a coffee expert on there, a guy who, traveled all over Africa and South America selecting coffee beans, helping roast them and selecting roasts for those specific coffees and how you can best enjoy that super delicious caffeinated drink. And we've got some plans to get some other weird guests on there. One of my hobbies is fly fishing, and I'm looking to get a couple dudes who are real big in fly fishing on the podcast and talk to them. Hopefully some folks that are, beer nerds as well. And ultimately, as I said, it's supposed to be about discussions with people who are passionate about what they do. And I don't know about you, Bill, but that's one of the things that I really love about podcasts is I can listen to somebody talk about woodworking or marble sculpting. If they're really, really into it, it sucks me in, man. Their passion becomes infectious. So this is kind of our seeking of that passion. Philosophers.
To somebody that's not looking at, that's outside looking in, and I compare it to like a blacksmith. Imagine that you don't have any clue what this blacksmith is doing. All you see is him just pounding all day long on this metal. And you're like, man, that job's got to suck. But you don't realize that every single pound has a meaning for this guy because he's passionate about what he does.
100%.
It's not a duration of time for him. Every single, he's embarking on a journey with this craft that he has chosen. It's just that he has chosen to be all in. And that's what I recommend people doing too. It's like, look, if you're going to choose to do something, you're trading your life for it. It's time that we can never get back. That's what we call spiritual currency. That's why they say, pay attention or spend your time wisely, right? And so this is something that, that's why we're here. We come from a creator, whatever it is that we believe in, but it is a creator that has made us, and therefore we are many creators, so it's kind of what we're here to do, to create on this planet and to teach and learn and to use our voices to speak the truth. So, we can raise consciousness together by walking the path as individuals and then having others see us, just to go down that route.
Dude, yeah, well said, man. And, it's one of the kind of unfortunate things I personally think, my brain working the way it does, is talking about these things sometimes seems very like hocus pocus or really cheesy when you talk about your passion or the things that inspire you and how important it is to make that a part of your everyday life. It's not it's not trendy. It's not that cool to talk about. It's not, you know,
we've been taught.
Yeah, for sure. But ultimately, my lack of understanding of the language to speak about what I want to talk about in a way that doesn't seem hokey doesn't devalue the principle of the subject. And I think for sure I am a passion junkie. If somebody's passionate about something, man, I'm there with you. I might not have any effing clue what you're talking about, but I'm stoked that you're stoked.
And that you found something that gives you so much joy, you know, and that you can create. I mean, that's what people, I mean, I look at, you know, I go to Burning Man, and me and my wife do every once in a while. And I remember one year we were making this huge camp, and we were spending our time building this camp and getting to know these people that we're building the camp with. And then after we were done building the camp, a lot of these people that I was camping with were amazing artists. And so then they set up these canvases and they started drawing, and it was so amazing, man, to see, dude, I know this person, you know, and look at what they are making. And it just makes you so proud to be part of the human race, you know, because we see and we build rapport with our fellow humans, and then we see what we're capable of creating. So it's something that Bill needs to go. What does it say? What does that mean? Bill needs to go to whatever. But it's a beautiful thing. I agree. And I have a podcast, Free Your Mind podcast is my podcast. And maybe we can do something that, maybe we could do a simulcast or something on that, or I'll talk dogs with you.
I'm in, man. Yeah, no, I'm in. As Miyamoto Musashi, he wrote the Book of Five Rings, and was a samurai who fought in duels to the death from the age of 13 to something like 30.
Okay.
And, he said, when you know the path broadly, you will see the way in all things. The more I learn about dog training, the easier it is for me to adapt those concepts to anything else that I find.
Yes.
And I think you can't do that only by learning one particular thing. You must learn a multitude of different things. You're not satisfied only training dogs, as passionate as you are about them. You also have to blow glass. You also have to explore your mind. It's important that we seek these things out. Passions in all senses. So I think, yeah, man, you want to do a simulcast, dude? I'm down. I'll force Dave to do it. He doesn't even have a say in it.
Come on, Dave. You're only 4 blocks away, dude. You're only 4 blocks away, man. We're pressuring you right now. Feel the heat, dude. Feel it. But so Amber says, "Hey, Josh," and Erwin. Oh, Erwin's starting to like me, man. I love it.
Good. Big shout out to Amber. Amber Roth. Not a lot of people know this. Dog trainer out of Niagara County, New York. First apprentice I ever helped train as a dog trainer was Amber Roth.
Beautiful.
Dude, like the prodigal daughter. She's a badass.
Awesome. Hey, Amber, great to have you.
And she's coming to conference this year, so if you're going, you'll get to meet her.
I'm going, dude. I got my tickets and stuff. I just need to pay it. I guess that's some heck of a resort that it's at, huh? That's going to be at. So
pretty intense.
We'll see. Yeah, might have to get an Airbnb or something if they'll let us all in one. Awesome, you guys. I want to say thank you to my brother here, Josh, and man, what a great conversation. That's why I love not really having, a set standard, because we went everywhere. Like you were saying, we went to the weighted blanket. We went to, the ability of animals to talk. If you guys are just joining us right now, not only share this with everybody, but also go back to the beginning and watch it. I mean, this is a great episode of the live stream that we've done, and I appreciate you, brother, joining me. Thank you for your time.
Dude, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, man. And guys, thanks for joining. It was a blast rambling and babbling about whatever popped into our noggins. So thanks for listening. And dude, I hope to catch up soon.
I'm sure we will. All right, everybody. Take care. We'll talk soon.